Welcome to the second lesson, My Story, Our Journey. As you know, I was born in Brazil, and at 2 months of age, I was taken to the tribe. Some of the elders will tell you that when I was 2 months, they remember holding me in their arms as a baby. A practice and custom of the Kirikatsi people is to give names or have name exchange, which carries a great weight of responsibility, participation, and activities of different aspects of the culture. My name in the language is Croare, which I haven't never really been able to know what the exact meaning is because it's a mixture or of immersion of different cultures. So the actual name they say is a fruit and an arrow or something to that aspect. So each of me and my family, we have names. So growing up there, it is a consideration that they have adopted us and taken us in as part of their family, and we belong to them. So for example, somebody that has my father's name, even if they're younger or older, I should call them father. And in the indigenous culture, there is plural leadership, which means everybody has the responsibility to rear, raise, and train, especially the older one, the younger generation. My parents were a part of a missionary agency for many years. They felt led by the Lord to step out, and in 2005, the local community found out about it by conversation or dialogue, and the request came that my parents stay out of respect and consideration for a long time standing relationship. It's through that experience and that time that I was able to continue living there and to further this ministry and the activities that we currently do today. You can read the book, there's more material about it, Born of Red Dust. It was written by me about my parents' life, the journey of obedience and sacrifice. Previous to that book, I wrote another book called The Ways of the Sparrow. Ever since I was 5 years old, I would drag my sister behind me to have a cup of coffee at 5 o'clock in the morning. And as I sat around the table with my grandparents and I heard the stories over and over again of the different things that happened that mapped out their lives and experience as they were able to dedicate their lives and their calling to the reaching of the unreached. And so from the battlefield of World War II to the seminary, they met and they went to boot camp and went to Brazil in 1952. You can also find a video on YouTube, a documentary that I was able to compile and put together to learn more about this story. So after my parents left the mission, and as we continued to walk and continue to explore what God was doing, my parents kept my sister and myself from going to boarding school, so we lived in the tribe all our years while there. And so my mom would learn the language and study the culture so that both her and my father could be able to present the gospel when the time was right. So raising children, my mother would hire somebody to help do a lot of the domestic work. And so there's this one particular lady that was with us for over 15 years. And the time came when she was going to retire. And after some time, she came down one afternoon, had a long conversation with my parents. And as they were discussing, my mom came over to me and with a very serious look on her face, she says, "Can I talk to you?" And she pulled me aside and we sat down. And she said she wants to call you son and she would like you to call her mom. For the consideration of raising you, she considers you her son. It was an honor for me. I said yes without thinking twice. And we went over, sat down, had a little formal conversation of acceptance. And from then on, I call her Inshi. Inshi means mother in the language. And so it was one more meaningful act or participation that really have impact on my life. So through the journey of missions and seeing God work, we saw a church planted, uh, and it was exciting to see through those 5 years. And my whole intent was that we would not see another missionary come from the outside, because after 30 years, it did not make sense to me that we would have to continue babying them to become a church that could lead on their own. So through the local church, we were dedicated 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, I felt like the Lord spoke to me and says, I'm taking the spotlight off of you and putting it on them. We had a miscarriage. My wife and I were at a low point in our lives, and so we went to a 3-month training course. And when we returned, we decided that we would no longer stay in the tribe because our presence would hinder their growth and pushing them forward. About a year later, we had a meeting with the local pastor, missions pastor, and we met with the believers, and there was officially established as a couple was officially established as leaders of the church, and they've been leading the church ever since then. So the part of my journey that I want to take you guys on, that's gonna be very impactful, and it will probably be shocking to you just like as it was for me. So in 2000, during that time, I started to get involved in the workshops, and there was this term that came out called indigenous theology. Some people might feel offended by it because there might be a differentiation between non-indigenous theology, but it's just more of a lens and perspective of how culture view and can interpret scriptures. The Word of God is infallible, the Word of God is authoritative, but as we can perceive, there are many denominations that read and interpret scriptures in different ways. So I started to do some research about indigenous theology, and I came across many indigenous theologians, and some of them really impacted my life and understanding, and that is some of what you will be watching and learning about in the next couple of weeks during this course. The one thing that really shocked us the most was when we came to the States in 2018, and I found out that there was going to be a symposium. The name of the symposium was White Supremacy, and of course, me being white, it had a little bit of an effect on my parents and ourselves, as we kind of thinking, okay, but we were curious to know more about what was going on, so we made the drive up to Nova Scotia, Canada, to be able to participate and just see what's going on in North America, as we were just in Brazil. So I felt like our world was really just in that world only, but I was really curious to know what God was doing on the broader aspect of different things. So when we went up there, we were really shocked by learning about the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s group, which was a time and era that the government with the church would establish boarding schools and remove children forcibly into the residential schools with intent to kill the Indian, save the man, by cutting their hair, removing disconnect them from their culture and their society with intent to migrate them or assimilate them into society. It was a terrible action and terrible stuff that was done in that regard. And so as we listen to these stories, as we listen to the impact, and as we come close to the indigenous communities, we will hear many harsh things, but we need to have the heart of Christ to be able to listen and allow them to voice their hearts, and it's through relationship building that we will have a really impactful ministry and be able to help them. So I grew up in a region, in a state that I grew up in. If you go east, almost all the tribes have lost their language, their cultures, and when colonialism came, it pushed the indigenous west. And so the state that I live in, we have were kind of like borderline that they still have their language, their culture, and their custom. And if you go out west, even more remote, where colonialism has least impact, they are even more into their culture and in the remote location. So through the through the advancement of technology and civilization, I'm not saying that indigenous are not civilized, just saying that the advancement of technology and the structure of the industrial age. So during the time when my grandparents were missionaries, it took them 3 to 5 days by horseback to get to the tribe. When I was a kid, it took about 8-hour drive because of the roads, and today it only takes an hour and a half to an hour on the asphalt road. So I hope you have an open heart and you are willing to listen and be teachable and to be proactive participants in this conversation through our quote. And as we listen to Acts 9, as we read in Acts 9, we'll see that Paul, he was a murderer, he killed many people, he had this impactful experience with the Lord that defined his calling, his ministry, and his understanding of what God had for him, and he had a total change, a radical turnabout. As we can see the book of Saul, we can see Saul, and in the book of Samuel, the Saul, we see that there's an oath system, and it's always restrictive and wants to kill, annihilate, and to silence. And so what I want to do is create the space so that we can be heard, be understood, and to belong to a community, so that the healing that is necessary for the indigenous people, so that there can be an indigenous church at the ends of the earth to be able to reach the world for Christ.